And we are back! Welcome to the Burnout Olympics, sponsored by the Saved as Draft podcast.
It's a sunny day here, but Bradley's inside working as always. Wow, you can really see the light leaving his eyes.
The sun is shining outside, but not in his heart.
Wow, that's beautiful. You should be a writer.
Nah, too much work. Anyway, let's check in on his progress, shall we?
Guys, I'm trying to get this podcast script written. Can you please keep it down?
And there you have it, folks. Confirmation that Bradley is in fact running behind.
Was that, ever in question?
I'm always running behind. Always. You're not telling me anything new, you know.
Bob, I gotta ask, what are your thoughts on this opening skit so far?
I'm still trying to pick up the pieces of the fourth wall myself.
This joke is breaking the fourth, fifth, and sixth walls.
Huh. I wonder what's behind the seventh wall.
Might as well break it down, eh, folks?
No, don't break that one.
Dear God, what have we done?
It's beautiful.
I cannot believe what I'm seeing.
Well, better start the episode before my mind shatters as a result of these forbidden truths.
Too late. Anyway, welcome to the Saved as Draft podcast. Welcome, one and all, to episode 13 of the Saved as Draft podcast. My apologies that we're running a day late here, but we got some exciting stuff in store for you today, including some bonus shoutouts. Also, this past week, we crossed over 3.5 thousand downloads of the show so far, and the number just keeps climbing. I also sincerely appreciate everyone's kind words and feedback about the interview I did last week with my dear friend and animator, James Nethery. More interviews will be coming soon. I opened a thread for all those interested in my subscriber chat, and I've already had a bunch of people reach out. So, I'll be in touch with those people to schedule some interviews in future episodes. I'm thinking maybe every 2 weeks or possibly monthly, but we'll see how it plays out. If you have a preference on when or how often you'd like to see interview episodes, let me know in the show's comments. Before we get into this week's shoutouts, I wanted to first call out Hazel Allen's new Substack publication, Bookstack. Bookstack is a new Substack publication from Hazel Allen with a focus on helping the indie author community thrive. You can use the upcoming catalog to discover your next read or just find your new favorite author. And if you have a book out and would like to get it listed in the catalog, you can fill out the book listing form, which is posted down in the comments of this episode. Please note there is a one-time listing fee of $3 per book that you wish to list. However, if you're listing more than 5 of your books, you'll get a bulk discount bringing it down to $2 per book. If you're interested in learning more or getting your book listed on the catalog, definitely check out the show notes for that link. I also wanted to once again shout out Audio Mazes, a new platform doing immersive audiobooks with branching narratives. I recently joined their team as an author on the platform, and I've been having an absolutely phenomenal time working with them so far. My first book with Audio Mazes, Dragon's Domain, is coming out in the next month or two, and I'm insanely excited for all of you to experience it. It's set in the 90s, in a world where dragons exist, but the government is trying to round them up. You'll take control of an office worker in the story who's been raising a dragon of his own named Zara for the last 15 years. When government agents show up to take her from him, your first decision will be to decide what happens next. There's multiple paths, endings, and other fun things to discover, so check out audiomazes.com and get yourself a subscription so you can be ready to listen to my book and check out some of the others that are already out. And if you're interested in becoming an Audio Mazes author yourself, I'll put a link to their website in the show notes where you can apply. And with that, let's get to this week's story shoutouts. We're doing a bunch of shoutouts this week, as I mentioned in the intro. I myself had another rough week, and the podcast is running late. It's coming out on Saturday instead of Friday. So what I did is I opened up a second thread via a note on Substack and asked people to share more links to their stories. I'm making up for lost time by shouting out even more authors, essentially, is the plan here. That being said, we'll go back to our usual selection process next week, so make sure to drop your links in my subscriber chat on Tuesdays when the podcast thread opens up. And without further ado, we've got just about, or over, last I counted, 10 shoutouts this episode, so let's get right into it. Our first shout out is the Apocrypha of Metal and Glass, Chapter 1 by A.J. Grant. If you're someone who's trying to learn world building, you simply must read this piece and any that follow in this series. It's easily some of the most rich and vivid world building that I've ever seen done in a single chapter. It also helps that the steampunk world where it's set is incredibly unique, but the story also incorporates original art and excerpts from in-universe texts to really set the stage from the moment you start reading, and of course, throughout the piece. The way the perspective sweeps across the setting as you're reading is also really incredible. It's like you're watching a film and the camera's passing through multiple levels of a fictional city. It does this while also keeping you apprised of the main characters, what they're doing, and where they're going. This combination of narration really allows you to learn all kinds of facts about the world without ever slowing down the pace of the main story. It's an incredible balancing act, and honestly I could barely believe it was working so well when I was reading it, but it absolutely does. The story also takes a dark turn toward the end of Chapter 1, with some really sharp dialogue, and even sharper body horror. It covers a ton of ground from a world-building perspective, and it leaves you absolutely invested by the end, ready to learn more. Really impressed with this first piece this week. Second is The Cask by Mina Howell. This piece was an entry into V. Walker's Blackout Poetry Challenge for National Poetry Month. And if you haven't seen it, V is doing poetry challenges every day in April, so be sure to check them out. A blackout poem, like this one, has you removing words from an existing piece and then using what's left to write up a new poem. You should really also see the visual Mina did for this because it's artistic and haunting. I really love the style she used for the font and the background. What's really amazing about this piece as well is how you can see that Mina took out large chunks of the text throughout, and yet the piece that came out of it still flows perfectly. It even creates a sort of back and forth while leaving out the majority of the text. It's a true example of how blackout poetry is done, and done well. Also, further proof that Mina can literally do anything and be a master at it. I've seen her do horror, poetry, fantasy, and she even has her own podcast, which you should absolutely check out. She literally can't miss. Number 3 is Operation Baker by Ember. This story is related to Ember's other story, which I featured on here a few weeks back, called The Battle of Isfatar Castle. So if you haven't read that one, be sure to check it out in addition to this one. Once again, this story reminded me of how much I love Ember's world and writing style. The setting of these stories is extremely unique, with all kinds of interesting elements and themes. And in the beginning of this story, for example, we get a look at some of the technology and magic of the world, and it's wildly creative. There's also talk of resurrection and something called a true death, and it all just adds to the allure and the world and the stakes of the story. Ember's writing style also comes through once again in this piece, with tons of personality, not only in the narration, but also the dialogue. There's a very distinct style here that stays consistent throughout, and it really brings her work to life. Next up is Abby's Conundrum by L.G. Wells. This is a short excerpt from L.G.'s upcoming book, The Trailer, and let me tell you, I am super excited about this book. I was on a call a little while back with L.G. for one of the Sprinorama events on Discord, and he pitched me the book during our call. It's wildly ambitious and extremely fascinating from both a premise and structure perspective. I'm serious, he's doing some really cool stuff with this project. In this excerpt here, we get a nice bit of context before reading a brief scene that highlights not only LG's writing style, but also gives you a nice substantial look at the book without giving away too much. Honestly, after finishing it, I'm super excited for the full book. I already was, but I'm even more so now. Next up, we have EMR's latest experimental conceptual short story, The Abyss. He actually submitted 2 links this week from the Tuesday thread and this bonus note that I mentioned. And since the episode's late, I went ahead and read both stories, but because I have so many shoutouts, we're just going to pick one to talk about. And of the 2, I decided The Abyss is the one I wanted to focus on. But rest assured, both are very good. Everything EMR puts out is fantastic. As a lifelong gamer, this story here, The Abyss, its take on Victorian and bubonic plague type horror immediately reminded me of Bloodborne in the best way possible. The characters and visual designs also really brought to mind the style and atmosphere of From Software's other games, and it just resulted in really phenomenal imagery that was gut-wrenching. Here's a line, for example. The boils were still popping and oozing in pus, rising the skin like thin leather. Oof, absolutely gnarly. I love it. The plague itself also sounds like it could be something more than a simple disease in this story, but the story still remains grounded as it goes on in this initial take. The immersive atmosphere and the gruesome imagery just keeps you really immersed the entire time. It also helps that the writing is just so elegant and appropriate to the time period. Honestly, it amazes me how EMR as an author can shift and adjust his style to match the setting. Going from The Abyss to the other story that I read that he also submitted, it felt like it was done by two different writers. In both cases, there were subtle changes to the narration and dialogue that fit the premise, the setting, and the genre. Really impressive stuff. Next we have Unrequited, a poem by Rowan McPhee. This poem has a very regal and elegant style to it that makes it feel sort of reverent at the beginning, but more emotional as it goes on. Each line has a very lyrical nature that makes it flow wonderfully, and the word choice is incredible. For example, there's a portion that reads, I beheld at a glance, with deep knowing, mind wide, third eye far sight, beyond your frail, ethereal beauty. And it just keeps going from there. But you can see, even in that small excerpt, how beautifully one line flows effortlessly into the next. Next up is grimdark serial fiction We Are Free, Part 1 by Jonathan Vance. I absolutely love Jonathan's style of grimdark fantasy, and this version of his story also includes wonderful narration from a female voice artist. Her voice pairs perfectly with the unique style of detailed, atmospheric, and immersive writing, and it just creates a wonderful experience. As far as the story is concerned, it spends a good amount of time setting the initial scene, but as it does, you feel a sense of dread building in the background before it shifts focus to the main characters. This extended introduction accomplishes a few things, not the least of which is an incredible amount of world building before it throws you into the main story. The way Jonathan sets the scene from one moment to the next is also one of my favorite parts about his writing. For example, there's a part where it reads, ramshackle storefronts and sagging cottages jut from the earth like splintered ribs, holding the market together. I mean, come on! That one line just paints such a vivid scene, while also outlining the grimdark atmosphere he's going for. It's truly masterful writing. Our next piece is Can Men Write Good Female Characters by Miguel Martinez. As someone who writes a lot of articles for work and otherwise, I have to applaud Miguel here on the structure of the piece alone. It's extremely well organized and easy to read, while also providing tons of specific examples and truly useful advice on the topic at hand. He starts by listing off the common tropes that male-written female characters fall into, followed by examples of stories that got it right, and, after that, provides exceptional advice on how men can write truly realistic, believable, and well-represented female characters. It's a heartfelt article that really dives deep into the topic, and I truly appreciate the amount of effort that Miguel put into it. As someone who tries to focus on varied and diverse characters myself, I know for a fact that my perspective is limited. After all, I'm a straight white male. I believe in representation and diversity, and I know that in order to do it correctly, I need to make sure that I'm reading and watching and experiencing other stories that show and represent diverse characters. Articles like Miguel's piece here is another way to expand your scope and your mindset as a writer, so I'm a huge fan of content like this, and I highly recommend you check it out. Next we have an author that I just discovered named Ludmilla Bruce. Ludmilla submitted chapter 2 of their story entitled Herald from Nowhere, but since this was the second chapter, I decided to go back and check out the first one as well for context. Needless to say, I subscribed immediately. Ludmilla's story here is an incredibly detailed and wildly unique science fiction concept that leans heavily into some truly interesting ideas as it goes on. Not only this, but the way the writing uses the first-person perspective here really pulls you into the mind of the main character, and it's wonderful. As the character is someone who is fairly secluded in Antarctica, the story here is also rich and complex, but it doles out details at a steady clip so you don't get overwhelmed by everything that's happened before in the world, and there is a lot of it to cover. It's a really good example of balancing exposition with world building, and if you're a science nerd like me, you'll marvel at how it uses existing concepts but pairs them with wonderful fictional counterparts to create something entirely new. Next up, we have another poem, The Night Remains Still by Hazel Allen. One of my favorite things about Hazel's poetry is the fact that it finds glimpses of humanity in relatively normal moments. And a lot of poets do this with their work, but Hazel's approach always draws this sort of ethereal line between the real world and the world of the poem in a way that's so quick that if you blink, you'll miss it. A perfect example is a stanza that reads, Depressed. You find life in each aspect of the night. These parts of nature living as if it's the ending of tomorrow. Such a beautiful stanza, but it's the way that Hazel applies human emotions to the natural flow of time and nature that I really admire here. Last we have A Dog Degree with Honors, mind you, by Leron Haywood. This fun and short piece had me smiling and laughing in equal measure. It quickly becomes clear when you start reading that one of the characters is in fact a talking dog, and the dialogue is absolutely hilarious throughout. What's more is that I often joke with one of my dogs, Clover, that she has degrees in all manner of different subjects. The fact that this story talks about how a dog has a degree and that no one takes dog degrees seriously had me literally dying. I was imagining this is exactly how a conversation with Clover would go between her and I. So check this one out if you need a good laugh. It's wonderfully written, and the premise was hilarious to me as a dog dad myself. In fact, I give this story 5 head pats out of 5. And last shout out for this week is In a Million Years, Evolution Omnipotence Passage 1 by Tales of Omnipotence. I love the dedication section at the beginning of this piece, especially how it speaks to the same feelings I had growing up of escaping into worlds and stories. It's such a wonderful way to get into the right mindset for this story. The story's premise takes us into the life of the youngest son of the Abrigar family, named Vion. The passage here poses numerous thought-provoking questions, but I think the last line sums it up best, by saying, can this world, immune to physical ailments and cosmic threats, reveal secrets capable of embodying an abysmal architect of history? I don't know the answer, but you can bet I'm excited to find out. Check out the passage for yourself with a link to this and all of this week's shoutouts in the show notes. While I can't do this many shoutouts every week, I just want to say that I'm glad I could sweeten the pot this week after everything that I've been struggling with outside of Substack, which of course led to the show being delayed. Your support and your inspiring creativity keeps me going, and I'm always excited for a chance to give back. We'll be back to our regular 5 randomly selected shoutouts next week, but thank you again to everyone who submitted here on the subscriber chat, as well as through the note that I did before posting the episode today. Really appreciate it. It was great seeing so many awesome stories. All right, next up is our top 3 on The Writer's Journey, my publication. In this segment, we'll talk about the top 3 stories from my Substack this last week, along with a little bit of behind-the-scenes info on what inspired each of the works. My top story this past week, with 430 views, was Constants and Variables. First off, for those who are BioShock fans, that is absolutely a BioShock Infinite reference. This story is set in my Synaptic Sprawl mythos, which is a horror multiverse filled with parallel realities. This story was originally a piece I wrote a few years ago about a couple having a final moment together before an asteroid hits the Earth. Instead of republishing just that original piece, though, I decided to connect it to my horror universe and offer a parallel version of the story as well to give it a branching narrative. My upcoming cosmic horror novel, For Those About to Vote, also features an asteroid, but that one gets destroyed before it can hit the Earth. The asteroid in that story is called Bennu, and those who read this story will see that the asteroid in these 2 universes is also called Bennu. Could it be the same asteroid across 3 parallel worlds? I'll let you read and decide. The second most popular post this week was 392 reads with The Horror, which was my entry into Day 2 of V-Walker's National Poetry Month Challenge. For Day 2 of the challenge, as I mentioned earlier, the goal was to write a blackout poem. I've never done one before, but I wanted to try it out. So, after taking an original piece and blacking out sections of it, I started with H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu and put it into Canva so I could edit things down until I reached a poem of my own. The opening section of the story is called The Horror in Clay, so I started by blacking out in clay, and that became the name of the piece. I had a ton of fun with this one, and it was awesome to see everyone's reactions. I'll put a link to V's Poetry Challenge post in the show notes, but be sure to check out her daily post to learn more about each challenge throughout the month of April. She has some really cool stuff in store. The third most popular story this week was 375 reads for Crossroads Rock and Roll. This is another one that I wrote a few years ago, but I made some additions to it and added full narration to the version that I published. This is a classic concept where a musician sells his soul in exchange for fame and fortune, but it has a twist. In order to be inspired, he has to eat cursed fruit from a tree that the demon gave him once the deal closed. If he stops eating the fruit, not only will he stop writing hits, but he'll also suffer horrific withdrawals. As you can probably guess, this story is a commentary on addiction and how painful it can be to wrestle with something as you try to break free of that metaphorical demon. As someone who's wrestled with similar issues, I wrote this story as a way to remind myself of how far I've come, and I hope it inspires others to face their own demons and take back control, whatever form they may take. Normally I would have a writing tips section next in the podcast, but due to the aforementioned disruptions this week and our delay, I'm going to skip that section in the interest of getting the show out as close to on time as possible. That being said, next week I'll be talking about self-promotion and marketing your writing, both here on the podcast and in a full article on The Writer's Journey, so I promise it'll be worth the wait. And next up, we have Thoughts from the Void, with Voidy.
I can attest, Sir Voidy's the best. He wouldn't dare play it close to the vest. He's here to share, from here into there, the writers and words of which he does care.
Oh, hey, Voidy. You look different. Did you get a haircut?
Oh, I'm so glad you noticed. I have a physical form now. What do you think?
You look great. Are you a cuttlefish?
Yeah, Sonia Ringo made my body.
Oh, you mean the talented poet and artist right here on Substack, who just launched her own podcast called Velvet Airwaves. That's Sonia?
The very same.
Well, what do you think of your new body? I'll make sure to put a picture of you in the show notes, by the way.
I think you need to learn some cuttlefish facts.
Okay, sure.
Did you know cuttlefish have 3 hearts?
I did not.
How about the fact that cuttlefish have 8 arms and 2 tentacles?
Huh, sounds like they get a lot of writing done. You know, which reminds me, now you have a body. Could you help me with writing?
Oh, look at that. I'm out of time.
Really? I thought you would have had more cuttlefish facts.
Who knows? Maybe next week. Gotta go.
Alright, and now we're back. And this is usually the part where I do what's called the Substack Soapbox Rant. But I've decided to change the name. And I'm going to double down on the alliteration. I want to have positive topics in this section and not me just complaining every week. So instead of calling it a Soapbox Rant, I am pleased to announce that this section will now be titled the Substack Soapbox Soliloquy. This means any topic is valid, not just things I want to rant about. And in the spirit of that, I'd like to talk about the writing community here on the internet. You see, I've been a writer my whole life. Well, for most of my life. I decided in 2nd grade that I wanted to be a writer and pretty much never wavered from that. Although at one point I did have a stint with archaeology, but ultimately came back to writing. The point is, I've been seeking a place in the writing community my whole life. I never really had any friends who were writers growing up. A few people read my stories, but that's about it. I used to think writers were actually super rare because I had met so few. In college, I took a creative writing class that was amazing, and I met a lot of cool writers there, but we never kept in touch. Fast forward a few years, and after I quit my retail job to become a full-time freelance writer, I started trying to get involved with the writing community online, and this was back when Twitter was still, Twitter. I started getting a lot of followers and finding a lot of people to follow, and it was good. I made a profile on Vocal at the time as well. This was about 4 years ago, and tried to get involved with that platform's community, but I still didn't have that feeling of really being a part of it, you know? I mean, there were people who I recognized. There were folks on Vocal who always left nice comments on my work, but I wasn't collaborating with anybody. I wasn't hosting events. I wasn't connecting with fellow writers on a deeper level. I even tried going to an in-person conference here in Virginia, and not even that yielded the results I was looking for. Everyone was nice, but I just didn't feel like I was part of the community. It felt like they'd already had their own thing going on, and I was just an outsider. Okay, so now it's January 2025, and I decided to start a Substack. This is where things got interesting. I knew this was a chance to really use everything I learned over the years, so I jumped in with both feet. I started my publication, and very quickly, I issued my first writing community challenge. I asked people to read and comment, like, and share, or restack, another writer's work every day. And I tagged a few people who I already saw doing that. It worked. People latched onto the positive energy, and things started moving. So now we jump to February of this year, and I'm thinking Flash Fiction February. Why not? I've always wanted to do it, and I never finished a whole month, so let's do it. Many of you listening now probably met me during that Flash Fiction February challenge. It was insanely successful. I also launched this podcast around then too. That's right, the one you're listening to right now. And that's not everything I've worked on, or everything I've worked on since joining Substack, but I'm not here to bore you with all those details. Instead, the point that I wanted to lead up to was to explain how difficult it is to find a true writing community. I'm talking about one where you can post about the real stuff you're dealing with, and people will flock to you for support. I'm talking about the kind of community where you can post a story and people really read it, provide feedback, offer critiques, and just generally support your work. I'm talking about the kind of community where you can talk to each other about real life and our place in the universe. The kind that can wax philosophical in daily subscriber chat threads, called Mindful Moments, for example. You know, the ones I do in my chat every day. That's the kind of community I wanted to be a part of, and the one I wanted to build around me. And guess what? It's here. It's happening right now. And it's growing by the day. I've been dealing with some seriously stressful stuff, but every single time you all have been there for me, in the notes, in my DMs, everywhere. I've seen others doing their own challenges as well. V. Walker, the poet I mentioned earlier, is hosting daily challenges for National Poetry Month. Meanwhile, you've got TP Chaos and Rachel Tribble, who just launched a publication recently to highlight great stories. Hazel Allen and V. Walker also run their own publication called the Potato Writing Collective. I even have a publication with Mary Ellen Brady called the Soulful Poetry Collective. You know, writers really like the word collective, huh? That's not the point. What's important is that we're all doing this together. Substack may be the platform we choose to congregate on, but this community, this bond that we've formed with us and our work, that's all us, baby. We made that. And I could not be more proud of every single one of you. So yeah, that concludes my first Substack soliloquy. I'll still do rants from time to time, but this week I just wanted to talk about, what we're building here and how much I appreciate all of you. I've never been more excited to see what the future holds. All right, and for our final section, we'll talk about what's coming up next week on Substack. This week, I finally made good on my promise to return to my realm of Devine with my story entitled Rage, My Faithful Companion that I published earlier this week. In that story, we got to meet two characters who will star in the series. The next one that's coming up is a story that will be called The Last of Her Kind, and it will introduce one of the final elves left in Devine after the rest were wiped out by the rot. Now, this elf and Sarai, who we also know is one of the surviving elves, don't know each other, so that revelation will come later. This coming week, I'll also write and publish an article on how to market yourself as a writer. This means we'll be tackling self-promotion. Why is it hard? What's the right way to do it? Should you print out a bunch of business cards with your face on them? Yes to that last one. But all these questions will be answered in the article, so stay tuned. Beyond that, I'm going to keep doing V Walker's daily poetry challenges, which I'm loving so far. And I'll be sure to mix in some other short stories of mine as well, so you'll just have to kind of wait and see. In the meantime, thank you again for being part of this true, authentic, and beautiful writing community that we're building here. Lots of exciting things are coming down the road, so in the meantime, stay safe, keep writing, and I'll talk to you soon. This is Bradley Ramsey, signing off.
Oh, come on! I swear this is where we parked our car!
You are always losing the car. This is the last time I go on a podcast with you.